Welcome to the Drop the Needle podcast, your backstage pass to the corporate jungle. I'm your host, Jim Alstott, and here, industry titans step up to the mic, sharing their epic journeys. We're hitting the high notes and the low notes of their careers, creating a symphony of success. This isn't just another interview show, it's where truth bombs are dropped and secrets are revealed. So grab your conductor's baton because who knows, this just might help you compose the next huge hit of your career. Are you ready? Let's go. Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Drop the Needle podcast. I am your host, Jim Alstott, and I'm so happy y'all decided to join us. Today's episode marks episode 1 of our exclusive series, where we'll be highlighting more of Pillar 2 and specifically intuition, empathy, and other energy-related topics. Our guest today is someone you may recognize. She is well known for her newspaper columns in both the Chicago Sun-Times and the Chicago Tribune. She's an Emmy Award-winning television journalist reporter. You could also know her from the radio as a co-host with Mancow, with Danny Bonaducci, Jonathan Brandmeier, and I'm sure I'm missing someone in there. She's an amazing author. Actually, she is my favorite author, as Audible can verify. She's written Stay Tuned, I'm Spiritual, Damn It, and This Isn't the Life I Ordered. She's also a star on stage and screen, most recently starring in her one-woman show, I'm Spiritual, Damn It. Ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming Ms. Jen Weigel. Hey, Jen.
Hey, Jim. Thanks for having me. I'm so excited to be here.
Well, thank you. Thank you. You know what? And I know I forgot a couple of other important things like voiceover professional, founder of the Spiritual Social Club, chainsaw juggler, tightrope walker.
Right. Not chainsaw juggler, but I did have to juggle fire sticks in college. That is a true story to get an A in a class at University of Illinois. But I think one of the things I'm most proud of lately is the podcast, and before that, the radio show. It's very hard to find female hosted radio shows, and I was one of only 2 women radio hosts on WLS AM radio here in Chicago, which is, now not a lot of people listen to the AM dial, but at the time that was a pretty fun accomplishment. But any platform to tell stories, as you know, storytelling is my passion. So I'm thrilled to be here. So thank you.
That's awesome. Yeah, you know what? And that's right. Your podcast is an amazing podcast. So we'll talk about that and maybe throw that out there so some people can tune into your podcast as well. What I'd really like to do is start with more. I would say that you have gifts, and I think that you would agree to that now. I'm interested to know when your gifts or everything started to kick in, and when did you start noticing those?
So I was raised in a household of journalists, but I was very sensitive. I was always told I was too sensitive. I would have stomach aches all the time, and I didn't know what this meant, but I know now there's a word for it, and it's called empath. And thanks to people like Dr. Judith Orloff, right, a psychiatrist raised by MDs, she wrote books like The Empath's Survival Guide, The Genius of Empathy, Second Sight, Positive Energy. All of these conversations were not happening in the newsroom, in the household, at the dinner table, right? Yeah. But now, as an adult, understanding what I always talk about in the Spiritual Social Club is your operating system, trying to figure out what this means when your body feels this way, or you just have a hunch when you walk into a room that somebody's not a great person, or it feels like, did somebody just have a fight? And it's really sort of a heightened sense of using your own wiring. And hunches are used in business all the time. They're used in medicine all the time. They're used in investigative reporting. They're used with the police and the detectives out there. Right. So anyone in forensics, you're going with the gut feeling, right? I mean, Conrad Hilton of Hilton Hotels called it the Hilty hunch. This is a very celebrated tool in business, but yet you start using it outside of business. Maybe you could say, a mother's intuition. But the I word, as I call it, intuition, is one of those buzzwords that gets a bad rap. And you think of person with, dead chickens around their necks,
Right.
smelling like patchouli. And that's not what's happening. I mean, I think emotional intelligence is now a buzzword you hear a lot in business, right?
Right. Yeah.
And I think it should be valued more than anything. And empaths as leaders, we just had Dr. Judith Orloff, the author of The Genius of Empathy and all those books I was talking about.
Hmm.
And she really talked about this yesterday, or it was last week on this social club, about how many graduation talks, the subject is empathy and the power of empathy, and empathic leaders are going to be the next big thing. So,
Isn't that interesting how that's transitioned from that stern or cold fire and brimstone type
mhm.
of mentality to where it is today?
Correct. And I think that's really important to celebrate for the sensitive wiring. Now instead of giving somebody a label as disordered, you have ADHD, you have ADD, you're too sensitive. I was always told, especially by some of my former radio cohorts, you just can't take a joke, you're too sensitive. And I was
Mm,
like, no, I could feel when something was ill-intended or was I can sense when someone's lying.
yeah,
And empaths are like that. You know when someone is BSing you, you know when something doesn't feel right, and yet we continually don't listen to it again and again and again. And so I'm just in a position now where I am not keeping it quiet anymore. I'm not hiding it. I'm encouraging others to celebrate it.
that's awesome.
Mhm.
Yeah, you brought something up where in the newsroom, I can tell you personally, one of the main reasons I stopped performing
Mhm.
was that that feeling. There was just something about it that I was too sensitive, I suppose, because you talk about somebody vocal performance. So I used to sing
Yeah.
opera or musical theater,
Mhm.
whatever, and the, I'm all about constructive criticism. And as a matter
Sure.
of fact, everybody was very complimentary. I never really had any bad reviews or anything like that, but it was just something that I became too sensitive, so much so that I recoiled and didn't want to be, um, I guess, for lack of a
Out
better
there.
term, judged all the
Yeah.
time.
Sure. And that's I was a theater major with
Hmm.
a journalism minor in college, and yes, coming to Chicago and auditioning and getting rejection after rejection after rejection. I didn't have the thick skin for
Yeah.
all of that. I would take it personally. I know a lot of people out there listening can relate. And when I read the four agreements, which one of them is don't take it personally, we never know. Somebody's reaction to us is none of our business. It's
Right.
it's with them. And so if you're not plotting someone's demise actively, chances are their disgust with you or disdain with you or displeasure with you has nothing to do with you.
Right.
I always say this to people, you remind people of something they haven't yet healed within, or it's just not a
Right.
fit, and maybe that's happening for you and not to you. One of that.
Right. That's a great way to reframe all of that.
Mhm.
So
Yeah.
I want to go back just for a second, if I can. You had mentioned, that feeling. You'd said you'd get stomach aches and things like that. So
Mhm.
with this, that was your sign or your signal that, hey, there's something going on here. Was it stomach, or did you have
Chronic.
any?
Chronic
Really?
stomach
Okay.
aches, yeah, and, I went to the doctor. My mom took me to the doctor because I was always curled up in a ball in anticipation. I remember walking home from school, I could feel if my parents were gonna be having a fight. Like, I just knew it was coming, and what I
Oh my
explain to
gosh.
people now is I liken it to, how a dog can start circling when they know a storm is coming?
Right. Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
how empaths feel when they know a storm is coming. It's weird, but it's like I didn't know what energy was, and energy is everything. It's frequency, and that's what's
Yeah.
happening now. We are connecting through a computer that has a signal that's going from Wi-Fi. We can't see it, but we know it's happening, right?
Right.
Same as with energy. And so I would have these chronic stomach aches, and so my mom took me to the doctor, and the pediatrician took my mom out in the hall, and I'll never forget it. I remember it like it was yesterday. He said to my mom, your daughter is just making this up for attention. So
Oh
ask her
my
to
God.
write it down in a journal, and I bet you that'll be so much work that she'll stop getting the stomach aches, if you know what I mean. And I was like, that guy went on to practice for 30 more years.
Oh my
So I
gosh.
wonder how many other children he just, kiboshed their feelings and chalked it up to being wanting attention, when really an empath knows this doesn't feel right. I mean, my son was
Yeah.
so sensitive, I couldn't take him to Curious George live because all of his senses were wide open, all of his, like his hearing, and it's like, it was like magnified. And I know a lot of people, well, listening to this and watching this could relate. You look at a sporting event, you see all these kids with the head canceling headphones
Yeah.
on, the noise canceling. That's because their senses are on overdrive and they need some help with their operating system. It doesn't make them disordered, it makes them wired wide open. And so I love to be in conversation with parents about this because they think something's wrong with their kid, and really something is
Yeah.
so right. It's so right, not wrong.
No, I can relate to that with one of my boys.
Hmm.
He's there are so many different sensitivities that he has to touch, to sound,
Yeah,
to different lighting in rooms and things like that. And yeah, and so one of the visits, they were like, "Oh, maybe he's got something else wrong. There's some
right,
sort of disorder,"
right.
and I quite honestly don't think that at all. I do
Mhm.
think that I am a sensitive individual, and I think that he is even more so. Uh,
Right. Well, they
so
come from us, and I'm sensitive.
right,
My son, of course, would be sensitive. But, one of the things to encourage anybody listening right now who has a kid who has, I mean, even textures can feel weird. My son
right,
didn't wear jeans until he was 18. He didn't like how they felt on his legs. This means that their operating system, just to know they're not alone, to know that this means you have incredibly hyper aware wiring. Now, I don't like to
yes,
use the word sensitive because even that can label something as disordered, as wrong. It's not. It's just awareness. A heightened sense of awareness will come in very handy for them later, but they have to understand how to turn the volume down. I mean, quite literally, Pat Longo, great teacher, healer. We have her a lot in the social club, best-selling author of The Gifts Beneath Your Anxiety, talks about, like, she taught one of her students that when she hears things in her ears and it's too loud, to literally picture like you're turning the volume down,
oh wow,
because we are in
what a great
control
tool,
of, it's like, just like, let's turn that volume down. And that worked for her. Look, everybody's different. It might not work for your son, but, just
right?
knowing there's someone out there that has that skill to offer it as a, everyone loves a good coach, right? You could sit down and play piano, but having a teacher can keep you on track with different, different ways, different
Right.
exercises. And that's really what we're doing in the Spiritual Social Club, is giving people exercises that they could see if it works for them, to know that they're not alone and that they're part of something, that's just happening. It's a transformation, right?
That's interesting. And you had said about your son having that sensitivity to genes.
Hmm.
Your son and my son sound very, very similar because
Hmm.
he's still that way.
Yeah.
Uh, you know, with clothing, with I don't like that T-shirt. I only like
Hmm.
these T-shirts.
Oh, the
Different.
tags on
Oh yeah,
t-shirts,
forget about it.
the liner of a sock, like if there's a
Yep,
seam in the sock, forget it. I mean, and
yep.
this is totally, and I know some parents out there listening to this be like, "Oh, wow, I thought my kid was just weird." No, it's their operating system. It is their sensitivity, and it's okay. Oh, sorry, my dog just kicked.
That's awesome.
She's right there having a
Oh, there's Birdie.
just kicked the laptop. I apologize. But yes, so but and whatever makes them feel more at ease, I say empower them to feel at ease. And over time, it will get better. It is like, that sock that just kind of keeps crouching down while you're walking and you're like, gosh
Right.
darn it, I just want it to stay up. Well, with the right fit, if you will, after a while, it won't be as annoying to them, but it's okay. Honor it, right? Don't
That's
judge
cool.
them for it.
No, that's awesome.
Hmm.
So you had mentioned, that's in us, or passing those uh, gifts, or the sensitivity that, or not sensitivity, that empathy,
Sure.
intuition is kind of passed down. Is there anyone else in your family that has those gifts?
Well, you know what? I don't know. Nobody talked about it, but it's interesting. Dr. Judith Orloff just talked about this with the social club last week. She said that her grandmother apparently had intuitive abilities, and her mom was born with them and became a therapist and didn't want anything to do with it, and
Right.
then denied her whole life that she had them. And then it was on her deathbed that she admitted to her daughter, okay, I was just hoping you would grow out of it, but you didn't. I mean, she institutionalized her daughter, Judith, because she just wanted her to
Wow.
just unlearn all the sensitivities. And it was just like she thought she was insane. So now that she knows that she's not. So for me, it was nothing. I'm sure my grandmother, Virginia, was a performer. And I feel like anyone who's an actor and a really good actor is empathic because they're taking on these characteristics of a character and the circumstances and they can put themselves there. That's empathy. You have to
Right.
understand what it would be like to be this person, okay, how can I relate to that character and their motivations and whatever. So any actor out there, I believe, is a total empath and they just don't know it. There's just not a word for it. So you as a performer, Jim, would have been, but my grandmother, Virginia, she could read the room, those people, they are
Right.
hyper aware. Now, I know a lot of people who are like clairaudient, for example, like they're sort of mediums, but it doesn't mean they're intuitive. Like they could be a bull in a china shop in a room. They're not at all reading the room. They're just barking out what they're hearing in their ear. There's a difference with someone who can read a room.
Right.
So my grandmother could read a room like nobody's business. She could zone in right to who needed to be lifted up, who needed attention. And she was a performer, she was a singer. So I think the more creative, the more anxious you could be, the more intuitive and empathic you actually are
That
in the
makes
environment.
sense. And I have never heard that. I swear, this is the first time that I've ever heard that connection.
Hmm.
And I've got to say,
Between
it makes
acting?
sense. Yes.
Oh, wow. Yeah.
I've never
Yeah.
heard that before, but that makes complete sense.
Hmm.
Holy shit.
Oh, good. We can
Wow.
say shit.
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
you can swear. You can swear.
Okay, good.
Yeah, no, this yeah. Yeah, I've got an F bomb waiting, so I'm
Okay,
sure
cool.
it always comes out.
Awesome.
So yeah. Yay. After graduating from the University of Illinois with your degree in theater and your minor in journalism,
Mhm.
you launch into your career as a journalist. And so I'd like to hear about that, or I'd like you to discuss that a little bit if you could.
Sure.
Uh, so if we can go from there and then almost to where we start the transition.
Sure. Yes. Well, I was, like I said, I got out of college. I was in a Shakespeare troupe, Shakespeare's Herd, Herd, and we were, hopping around theaters in Chicago doing plays.
Hmm.
I did Queen Margaret and Henry VI parts 1, 2, and 3. So I literally played Queen Margaret age 16 to like 65. It was quite
Oh
a challenge.
wow!
I loved it. I loved it. But it was also stressful. I was waiting tables. And then what I started doing was I took on a third job as a traffic first intern. I was an intern for Shadow Traffic, which is a
Yes,
broadcast entity here in Chicago.
yes,
And so I would intern. I would go at like 5 in the morning, and you would learn the ropes, if you will, to understand the traffic patterns and giving
right.
traffic on the radio. And so I started as a traffic reporter. And then when I realized that they offered me a job, this is a true story, a contract for $18,000 a year,
Sweet.
but it had health insurance. I was like, okay.
Yeah,
I think I paid more in parking downtown at the Hancock than I did on my earnings
yeah. No kidding.
because it didn't include parking. So I would take my little stick shift Saturn downtown and park, and it was not glamorous, Jim, by any means. I was up at the crack of dawn, and I worked a split shift, which meant you did morning drive, went home and napped, went back for afternoon drive. I was chronically
Ho ho
tired.
ho ho ho.
It was unbelievable, and I was in bed by 7:30, 8 o'clock. For a 26-year-old, woo,
You're
um,
living.
good times.
Yes.
Yeah, wow. And
Oh
I
my
went from being
gosh.
a night owl actor to being this morning split shift. And so after that, I did that for a while, and then after a while, you kind of get promoted, and that's when I started working with the likes of, Danny Bonaducci, Jonathan Brandmeier. I did his sports for a while. He's a Chicago person here. Steve Cochran, I worked as his news anchor. I was teamed up with Richard Roper, and then I went into television from there. WGN Television called me in, and I became their entertainment reporter after Roy Leonard, who was an icon here in Chicago,
Right.
retired. So I went from entertainment, and then I went over to CBS, WBBM here in Chicago, and I was a news reporter, anchor. I was always writing though on the side, Jim. I always did freelance newspaper articles, and then, as you mentioned, I had a stint as a newspaper columnist for the Tribune and the Sun Times. The Tribune, my column was called Lessons for Life, and I loved it. It was, and then sometimes I was a wellness columnist, which again, people weren't really talking about. But if you could
Right.
tie it into some medicine, then people were okay with it because
And
they
they
are
listen.
connected.
Right. Right.
But in the middle of that, my father, who was a sportscaster here in Chicago, Tim Weigel, died of a brain tumor at the age of 56. And so I went on this quest because I was grieving and I thought, this is bullshit. I don't know where he is. All these mediums and psychics claim to have these abilities. I'm going
Yeah.
to out them for being frauds and write an expose. That's what I thought. I thought I was going to do this expose on intuitive, mediums. And I found out as 4 books, 8 audiobooks, and several thousand interviews later that we are all wired differently. And some people are really super intuitive and they are here just to help us connect to these other realms that I can't possibly explain. But I wound up taking Reiki energy classes and reflexology and massage therapy and,
Wow.
all of these different modalities, and my hands turned on, which was just weird. The weirdest feeling, Jim, was the first time I was in a class and my hands were buzzing and I'm like working on this person and we weren't told what was wrong with the person. We were just told to kind of scan their body, and it was really like imagining that you're blindfolded and your hands are, like the people who are blind and they have a stick and they're trying to feel their way. That's how I was taught with
Wow.
energy work of Reiki. So here I was scanning this body and I'm like, I don't know what's going on, but here, let's try it. And I was hovering over her left eye, and I kept feeling this sensation in my hands, like really beaming heat and tingling, which I now know is a symbol for me, because everyone's different, for there is some stuck energy here. Focus here. Because really, at the end of the day, you, anyone watching this or listening, we are all conduits and could plug in our hose
Huh.
to the source, which is really just a flow of energy. That's what I would do. I would ask to be a conduit. It's not coming from me, it was coming through me, like a sprinkler system. And so here I had my hands over this woman's face, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. I mean, seriously, Jim, I think I say that sentence every day. I don't know where this is coming from. And I've got to stop because my mentor is like, shush, you're insulting the divine. I'm like, whatever, it's weird. So I got my hands over this lady's face, and the teacher tells us that she had eye cancer in that
Oh,
eye.
wow. Oh,
I'm
wow.
like, what the? Again, so weird. I mean, I think the next title of my next book is going to be That's Weird. Because
That's
literally, that's like
how
how I feel I've
appropriate.
lived the last,
Oh,
15,
wow.
20 years. And so it was totally bizarro. I didn't know what was going on, but I took that as a sign that that's what it means when there's a blockage and blah, blah, blah. And so I never in my wildest dreams, but it was
Yeah.
my dad's death that was the conduit to that journey exploration and to wanting to sort of understand what all this meant, because I would see people, doing interesting things and having these intuitive abilities. And then I started meeting regular people who had near death experiences.
Oh,
So I
yeah.
always felt like, Jim, hey, they were there. I wasn't.
Right,
I'm going to
right,
trust their perspective because I don't know. I wasn't there. They were. And so those are the conversations that get me so excited just to hear what they saw, experienced, felt, whatever. And then coming back from that, many of them living miracles because they were without oxygen for multiple minutes, more than
right.
one should be to survive. So if we opened our eyes, I say this as the journalist, the trained journalist, if we opened our eyes to the fact that maybe we don't know everything, there's a shocker.
Right,
And that we're
right.
here to be, enlightened and learn from others, because otherwise we would be thinking the world is flat and it's okay to smoke on airplanes. I'm old enough to
Right.
remember the
Oh,
smoking
yes.
section of an airplane. Like, what is that? We're in a petri dish. It's all being
Yeah.
recycled. We're all, breathing, but
You
we
mean
did it.
row G?
Yeah,
I wasn't safe in row G when it
exactly.
when it was going on in row H.
So
Oh,
true.
geez.
So true. Yeah.
Oh
So
my gosh.
a very
Yeah.
long-winded answer to your simple
No,
question.
no, no, no. That's awesome. But here's the thing too. So I want to go back because initially, and I know from knowing you and reading your books and listening to your podcasts and everything, some of these answers, but there was still that piece of me that is stuck on this. I view what you were accomplishing at that period of time as being very successful in the industry,
Right.
like very successful.
Mhm.
Being, on the radio, on the television, in the
Mhm.
newspapers, there were at that point in time. There's nothing else that you could have been doing. You hit
Right.
all senses, all
Mhm.
sources of media and being out in front of it, plus on stage and everything.
Mhm.
So it was like, what the fuck just happened? Why did she do that? She just walked away from
Mhm.
that.
Right.
And so that was because of your dad's passing. Is that what you're saying, or is
Yeah, no, I realized that, well, it had been sort of building up like a crescendo that every
gotcha?
time I was sitting at the news desk as an empath talking about fires, hit and runs, death, destruction, everything's wrong back to you, I would take it on. And
Yeah.
and so a real turning point for me was 9/11. I was a reporter at CBS
Oh my
for
God. Yeah.
9/11. And I walked into the newsroom. We had been out on a morning thing, and they wanted me to go over to the Sears Tower, which is now the Willis Tower, with a crew because they had heard it was going to be the next target. And I looked at my news director and I said,
Holy
"You
shit.
go. You want me to go where you think it's going to be a target? You
Right.
go." I was like, "What are you crazy?
Yeah, no
You
thanks.
nutty bitch." Like I was
Yeah.
like,
No
"No way."
shit.
I was so pissed. So that was like one of those things where you just see that they're on autopilot. Or I write about this in my first book, Stay Tuned. It's like, "Hey, Weigel, go get some sound on the mother of the 3 dead kids, will you? And be back
Oh
here
my
by the 11th." And
God.
you're like, "Oh, the mother of the 3 dead kids. Okay, great."
Oh my God.
Tragic fire kills 3 children under the age of 4, and this woman
So
is
how are you
bawling.
feeling right now?
Mhm.
So
Right,
what
exactly. How does it feel to be a grieving mother? I was just like, "Ugh."
what the
And so I just and then so my dad passes, all those things happen, and I'm like, "I don't care." And so what happened was I went into my boss's office and I begged to be taken off of the early morning shift because getting up at 3:30 a.m. was taking its toll,
oh sure.
and the news beat, put me on entertainment. I'll be happy. Hell, I'll do sports. I don't care. I had experience with all of it. I'll be your weather woman. I don't care. I'm not a meteorologist, but like just let me do something that is not everybody's dead back to you. And they said no. They said no. So again, when you look back into those moments of your life where everything changes, they were just playing out their roles perfectly. So I can thank them for it because
Right.
if they'd made it easy and said, "Sure, go ahead, cover entertainment," I wouldn't be talking to you, Jim, because I wouldn't have met you, because I wouldn't have gone off and quit the job at CBS, written all these books, and then decided to embrace my intuitive whatever wiring. So it was a catalyst. It was a much needed. So at the time you feel like, gosh, that mean boss wasn't nice to me. And it's like, no, wait, thank you. Thank you to both of them. You
Right.
know what? That was what I needed. Otherwise, Craig, wherever you are today, thanks for not letting me switch schedules because I walked away. And I did. I walked away in the middle of a 3-year contract, making great money, and everybody said I was crazy. And I remember getting a call from everyone, even the columnist at the time, Robert Feeder, who writes about, all media, calls and says, "What are you doing?" I was like, I'm not happy. Isn't
Yeah.
happiness a factor anymore? Like, I'm not happy.
No.
I'd like to be happy. Silly woman, want to be
Yeah, no
happy?
shit.
So,
How
yeah.
dare you be
How
happy?
dare you? Yeah, do what you want. But I think that's part of our wiring too as a society. You should never turn down a job that has, a salary and benefits no matter how miserable you are. Well,
Right.
no. Let's flip that script. I don't believe that anymore. I just don't.
No. You know what? And that's something that I talk about regularly to people, as a coach, if in the corporate world. I think, and I say this and people think it's a flippant response, but I think that somebody is very fortunate if they actually enjoy what it is that they're doing and they get paid for it. So if
Right.
you're in a job that you go, huh, and here's the thing, you always hear about people, or you're sitting around your coffee clutch or whatever, clutch, whatever, I don't know what it's called, but
Hmm.
when you're commiserating, I guess is essentially it, right? So, oh, I hate
Right.
my job. Ah, me too. And me too. Oh, I don't hate my
Mhm.
job. I like my job.
Right.
And you're looked at, side eyed because of
Hmm.
that, because everybody hates their job. It's supposed to, you're supposed to. But I
Right.
think I tell people, hey, don't fall prey to that. If you truly enjoy your job and everything about it, God bless you,
Yeah.
good for you. Keep it that
Right.
way. But
Right.
if you don't, why be miserable?
Hmm.
Because
Right.
it's not going to last. Or if it does, it's like pain too, because if somebody has chronic pain,
Hmm.
that changes a person.
Sure does.
It really, truly
Yeah.
does. If anybody's ever experienced that, they know what I'm talking about. But I think that the same thing occurs when people are chronically stressed,
Mhm.
unhappy
Yes.
with whether it be their job or their life or their relationships.
Mhm.
And that's not, hey, a sign to say, oh, screw it all.
Mhm.
Run away to the islands and live your life as
Right.
finding shells on the beach. But you
That'd
know,
be nice.
yeah, it would be.
Uh-huh.
But I think that there's a happy medium as it
Right.
relates to that, and
Mhm.
that's
Mhm.
interesting.
I think too, even just opening your mind, Jim, to the possibility that, like, what if you actually had a job you dug? Like,
Right,
what
right,
if instead of taking this, okay, so many people, I do coaching with people as well, and they're like, I just want to figure out how I can do, more of what I love in addition to my 9 to 5. And I was like, what if you could make your 9 to 5 what you love? Like, really open your mind to the possibility that your nine to
right,
five could be something that brings in an income instead of the have tos and the want tos.
right.
Like, let's merge that together. And part of that journey is just even understanding that it's a possibility. That's where people go, wait, 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 what? I
Yes.
never ever would have thought that I was able to have conversations with people that just really excite me and publish books about it or podcasts about it and or do Zooms where people would want to be in attendance. I had to completely reinvent myself when the pandemic hit and all the live events I used to do I had to now create on Zoom and
Right.
I asked, okay, universe, show me the way. Let's figure this out. And when you realize you're in collaboration with something bigger than you, it's just admitting that you don't know everything.
Yeah.
You are, in that sort of like, who's riding shotgun with you? Like let's say the universe is riding shotgun and your energy is in collaboration instead of contradiction.
Butting heads. Yeah, 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 yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. It's an interesting concept.
It is, and it is. You even said it. It's almost like we're wired to say, no, we're not supposed to do this.
Hmm.
You
Hmm.
know,
Yeah.
you're supposed to be. Oh no, it's just my job. It's just my
Mhm.
job. Why not make your job a passion too? How lucky can you
Right.
be?
Right.
So, looking back on that from your current vantage point, and I know you as being a very positive person, is there anything that you would maybe do differently, or did everything happen the way it was supposed to happen,
Oh
and you
gosh. Oh,
accepted
I
that?
mean, I think if I could look back, and I apologize if you're hearing my dog snore, because in addition to
No,
whatever, she's now
that's
snoring, which is
fantastic.
hilarious. I'm like, okay,
Oh, I
she's
love that.
snoring away. So if I could do anything differently, I think I wouldn't have moved so many times. Well, actually, I had to move 6 times in 7 years, Jim, and it was just
Oh
very
boy,
chaotic. And I
yeah,
feel horrible as a mom because I have a son who's just graduating high school. And so he had to be along for the ride on all of those moves. And they were really unfortunate circumstances, like, black mold in the building, or
oh,
the rent was like almost doubled, or whatever, like really random, or I got divorced, or these sort
right,
of things happened that triggered, I was reacting. And so this last change for me, I was really taking action instead of being in reaction. I was being proactive instead of reactive. And that's a very different feeling. So if I
yeah,
could do it over, I would be more proactive and less reactive. And that's really a lot about perspective. Instead of doing something because you have to,
right,
doing it because you want to. And really kind of looking at all the angles of like, I was so quick to react when something looked foggy or anxious or, like the reason I moved the first time, it's like, okay, I got divorced. But really, if I look at it, I could have probably made the payments work. If I had just, figured it out, I could have refinanced. I could have made it work. But I was in
right,
such a like, all right, I got to get the heck out of Dodge kind of mindset. And then all these other things that happened, I think we're so quick to jump ship or move on when things feel uncomfortable. And
right,
we think that by just changing the landscape completely, that'll make it more comfortable. But sometimes new isn't always better.
right, right. No,
So, yeah.
exactly. I was just thinking about what you were saying. It was like, yeah, sometimes that change of scenery is just what that person needs or what
Correct.
you need.
Yeah.
But sometimes it's not running to, it's running from.
Mhm.
And that's a different thing. And the whole feel, like you mentioned, I was thinking in my mind, boy, that's a different feeling altogether when you're in charge of that move as
Right.
opposed to reacting to that
Right.
situation. What a
Yeah.
difference.
Yeah,
What a
and I
difference.
think that that's where my trust meter wasn't on. I was more in an angry, reactive mode for a long time, survival mode, right? Fight or flight.
Right, 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 right.
And, now that I know how, to sort of decompress that a little bit, and it's sort of like, "Okay, now let's think about this." And one of the people I interviewed who had a near-death experience, her name is Anita Morjani, and she wrote a book called Dying to Be Me. And she was in a coma for 30 hours. And she had like 25 tumors, all cancer, some of them the
Holy
size of
cow.
lemons. And when she was in her coma, she realized that all of her sickness was a result of her fear based belief systems. And what she got
Wow.
while in the light was, imagine if you had nothing to be afraid of, what would you do? And it's like,
Wow.
from a calm standpoint, not from an ego, "I'll show you" standpoint.
Right,
It
right.
really has to come from like we talked about, like doing what you love and getting paid for it. Like, could you imagine? And so, if I went into that headspace of, okay, if I had nothing to be afraid of, what would I do? Well, I would probably stay in this house and I would make it work and I would do this and I would do that. I mean, thinking back on it now, I could have had like a couple of roommates of other single moms going through divorce in my house to help me
Sure.
with the cost and the paying of the, like, stuff happens and you get creative. And that's the thing, when you open your mind to the possibilities that maybe you will be shown the answer instead of just react. But then, like you said, sometimes you got to change things up. I said about this
Yeah.
most recent shift for myself, I had to completely shake things up to feel my life. Like I was in, just do this for this because I was raising my son. And now
Yeah.
he's going off to college and I'm going to be an empty nester. And it's like, if I could live anywhere, where would I go? So I relocated to a place that makes me feel calm, that I love. It's a little bit of a drive for my son, but heck, the kid's going to college in the fall. I'll be
Right.
fine. And so it really shook me up. But sometimes, like a snow globe, you got to shake it up to see the snowflakes.
That's awesome. Yeah, I love
Yeah.
that.
Hmm.
That's a great description of that. I like
Yeah.
it. Um, so you had mentioned where you had to shift in during the pandemic, and a lot of people had to shift and
Yeah.
pivot what they were doing or away from what they were doing to find some other way to get it done.
Hmm.
And I feel that the work that you're doing with the spiritual social club is important work. So I think it's very it was great that you were able to transition into that uh, Zoom or remote
Hmm.
type of environment. Specifically, I think that then that opens, or excuse me, doesn't open, it brings down the barriers of geography
Hmm.
too. Because
Correct.
think about it, because I do know that you have people coming in from different countries. You
Right.
couldn't do that. Your outreach couldn't have been that without that happening.
Right, that's where it goes to the "it's happening for you, not to you." You're right,
Correct.
we've got social clubbers on from Hong Kong, from Amsterdam, from Canada, from Japan, we had people logging
Right.
in, the UK, and all of this wouldn't be possible when I was just doing 1 live event a month, in the suburbs of Chicago, so this is
Correct.
really, and now we have them, I do this annual conference the first weekend of November in Fontana, Wisconsin, the All Souls Retreat with my friend Amy O'Keefe, and we are on our 7th year. And now some of these people are coming from their, designated area, and some of the people in Europe are going to meet. I do trips in Europe now annually, and so we're going to meet in the world, Jim. It's like,
That's awesome.
holy shit, is that cool? And I
It is
never would have
cool.
met these people if I hadn't opened up the net, cast a wider net.
Right.
And so that goes to anybody in business. Sometimes you do have to shake things up, cast a wider net, and just see, because if you create something that's useful for anybody in the world, which is a community of like-minded others to share stories and inspirations and collaborations and authors and resources, all of those things. Whatever your business is out there, If you think of a way to make it accessible to others, then you will draw in. It's that whole, if you build it, they will come. Just
Right.
like what you're doing with this podcast. You don't have to be anywhere in particular to tune into this, which is so cool.
And
You
that's
know?
what I love that.
Mhm.
I truly do because, the whole premise behind doing this, you know, somebody said to me, or asked me, do you think it's ego driven doing a podcast? And I was like, well, no. But then I thought again, I was like, well, what if it is?
Right. You guess what? You need an
Who's it?
ego to be in a human suit. Like it's part of
Who does that
survival.
hurt
Yeah.
to do
Right.
that? I said, but in all honesty, my hope is that by doing this, someone could be impacted by it, right? So,
Mhm.
and that's why I wanted so much for you to be on this because of your story of going through, and I'm using air quotes, of a normal
Right.
existence of,
Right.
I'm doing this, but it wasn't normal for a lot of people because not everybody is comfortable being in front of a camera or being on the
Right.
radio, and I think that takes a special person too. But the point is that you were doing something like that, and there was something there
Mhm.
that caused that change, that was the catalyst or the impetus for that change. And I think a lot of people probably have that same feeling, and that's those same happenings,
Mhm.
but they just don't know, first of all, what it is.
Mhm.
What is empathy, what is intuition, what are clairs. Some people are just like, I'm overtired.
Yeah.
I'm just overtired today.
Mhm.
And it doesn't necessarily have to mean that. Could it mean that? Sure. But it
Sure.
doesn't have to mean that.
Mhm.
And if you don't know it, if you don't know what it is, or if there's somebody that you may be feeling the same thing, you may
Mhm.
feel that you're just in it by yourself.
Right.
And that's where the Spiritual Social Club, and more specifically you as the
Mhm.
founder of that, have opened up the doors and made it accessible for many people to experience that, to have that, and to feel comfortable with who they are, which I'm very thankful for. But that's why I want to do this too. It's just so somebody can maybe be helped through this
Right.
effort.
Absolutely, and I always say to people, if one person listens, that then you've done your job. Like the
Right.
model of broadcasting is so skewed to all the ego crap and ratings and how many people are watching and listening and viewing and clicks and comments and all that. And that goes
Yeah.
against everything that I am now currently in the whole, if one person watches, it's enough. Even if nobody is witness to it other than the frequency of my freaking living room,
Right.
you can actually project out a healing frequency from your couch, and it makes a difference. I mean, the bottom line is and that's a problem I think with the United States and the Hollywood machine and all of this. It's about awards and how much money do you have and how big is your house, and all of these things are valued more than,
Right.
are you nice to the waitress? Did you tip your server? Did you thank the person who cleaned the bathroom at the airport? Like these are much more important karmic, because again, it goes back to interviewing these people, Jim, who've died, and they talk about this life review where they literally see circumstances play out and exchanges at the checkout line at the grocery store where somebody gives somebody a heartfelt thank you
Hmm.
and a smile and tells them, you're doing a great job. That person then smiles and goes home and is nicer to their kids because the
Right.
person at the checkout line was nice to them. Those are the exchanges that are measured when you
Yeah.
get over there, when you're not here anymore. And that's where, so I tell people all the time, I ghostwrite books for people too, Jim, that want to have books.
Right.
And I don't take every project because sometimes it's about ego. They just want another notch in their belt, or, they want to prove to their daddy or mommy that they're worthy by having a book or whatever. If these are the intentions behind the project, I'm not going to take it on. But if the
Yeah.
intention is, I hope these stories can help people because I went through this and I want to share this, or, I hope people can come together because of this, then that is cool. And that
Right.
is what I want to sign up for. So intention is everything. And ego, we have to have an ego, right? We have to get up
Sure.
and, I get it. We're part of this human construct. But if it's your driving force and your only why,
Yeah.
It's like standing in quicksand. You will
Flimsy.
sink.
Yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, for sure. For sure. Well, I'm going to transition or segue into one of the pillars because even though we're doing this special series, I'd
Mhm.
still like to keep one of the pillars in place, and that is the fourth pillar, which is music.
Perfect.
Because as I always say, music is the tie that binds, and everyone, and I do mean everyone, has a soundtrack that they
Mhm.
can attach to their life if they just think about it.
Mhm.
So we're going to jump right into those questions. Are you ready?
Yes.
Okay. So,
Okay.
what was the first song you fell in love with from the radio?
From the radio. Okay, so I was really thinking about this, and I think that there's, back, I'm showing my age here, but we would have a whole sound, like, you would have the cassette, which would play like the whole sound track or like the
Hmm.
whole, and it was like it told a story. And sure, you could just queue up one song if you wanted, but it was a lot harder back then. You have to fast forward and rewind to try to get to the one
Right.
song that you like wanted. Okay, kids, you have no idea how hard we worked
Oh my
to
gosh.
get the song in the right spot. So what I was thinking of was Peter Gabriel's "So,"
That was a
that
great
album
album. Yeah.
"So," but "Red Rain" in particular was the
Oh,
song I could just listen to. I could never get. I never get tired of that song. There's something to it. Even now, just talking to you about it, I get goosebumps. There is something so beautiful. It's sad, but it's also inspiring, and it's a good song to run to. I mean, it's just,
yeah.
wow,
That's
wow,
going through my mind right now. After you said that,
yeah,
I was like going, yeah, I
hmm
can the chorus on that, the hook, that's
hmm
good. It's really good. Thank you.
yeah.
So the second question, did your family have a song that everyone would belt out on road trips?
My dad loved, oh my God, was it Arthur Drell and the Drells? Um, uh, oh gosh, it was like, hold on a second. I got a Arthur, golly, I should have had this more queued up.
That's okay.
Um, um, it was, golly, the Shake Up or something. Hold on a second. It'll come to me. But my dad loved James Brown too. He loved
Oh,
anything James Brown. He was very into Motown. Um, and it was really Arthur Bell and the Drells, maybe? Hold on a second. Yes, Arthur Bell and the Drells. Hold on a second.
I
Archer,
didn't.
the Tighten Up. There he is. Archie Bell and the Drells. I'm really taking it
Archie
back.
Bells. There you go.
Archie Bell and the Drells, the Tighten Up from 1968. He's like, this
Wow.
is a song that we tighten up with, and it's like they just record and they go through all of the instruments. I have full goosebumps on that one. Archie Bell and the Drells, the Tighten Up. My dad would sing that in the car. He played the organ. My dad he could play anything on the
Get out of
piano.
here. My
Yeah,
mom played the organ. That's
yeah.
so funny. That's
So he
so
could play
funny.
the organ, he could play the keyboards, and he read music. And
Yeah.
so, Archie Bell and the Drells was a big one, and it just every time I hear it, it takes me back to how my dad would dance around the house.
How cool is
Yeah.
that? I
Mhm.
think I would have liked listening to your dad's soundtrack too. That
Yeah.
would have been pretty cool.
Yeah.
Very cool.
Mhm.
So in high school, everyone
Mhm.
has this their anthem. Did you have an anthem in high school?
Mhm. Yes. Well, it's funny. Yaz upstairs at Eric's
Yes.
was an incredible,
Yes.
and the song Two Pieces, from that soundtrack was really like that, but also Bizarre Love Triangle. I was torn between the 2. Bizarre Love
Oh,
Triangle was a very big song for us in high school, big time
wow.
when that one came out. So either one of those, but then as I got to college, D-Light, Groove is in the Heart was my anthem.
it's,
That
it's
was
just
hands down.
popping and locking. Yeah.
Mhm, absolutely. Like, no matter where I was, if that song came on and nobody was dancing, I would stop what I was doing and go onto the dance floor and dance. And it's suddenly it's the song everybody wants to dance to. Groove
that's
is in the Heart. Yeah.
that's
Mhm.
crazy. That is so cool.
I love that.
Yeah, I was just thinking about your Yaz,
Mhm,
and there's such a difference. So I was thinking, okay, so grew up in a closer to an urban environment,
mhm, mhm.
well, the city of Chicago, Evanston,
Yep.
but so when I was going through high school, living in a more rural farm town,
Mhm.
much different in
Yeah.
terms of musical influences. So that's
Mhm.
really interesting. I like that.
Yeah.
Um, so that the transition from high school to college, and then after college, is there let's say for a hype playlist,
Mhm.
are there some songs that you have for your hype playlists that just make you want to crush the day or the week?
Yes, and it's, a song called "This Is the Day" by The. This is the day your life will surely change. This is the day when things fall into place. It's got a wonderful hook in the beginning. If you've never heard of it, it's a great song from the album called Soul Mining, Soul Mining. So the definitely. And ironically, I found out later that the guy wrote it like when he was having a cocaine bender and was
Oh
like,
my
"Ah, I
god.
gotta change my life." And I'm like, okay, well that does not fall into line of why I love that song. I think
Right.
like a starting fresh, time to, control alt delete everything.
Yeah.
This is the day. Yeah. So I love This Is the Day. And then you too try to throw your arms around the world. Um, I love the line, "A woman needs a man like a fish needs a bicycle." You know, a
Yeah.
reminder just like you don't need a man to be okay, to be whole, just
Right,
like a
right.
fish doesn't need a bicycle to get around. And so, "Throw your arms around the world." I love that one too.
That's very cool.
Simple.
Very cool. Yeah, both I know I've heard of the, but
Mhm,
I haven't heard that song, so I'm anxious to throw that one on the playlist for us.
mhm,
So we talk about the songs that are the hype list,
mhm.
but if there were some songs that you think if people would just stop and listen to the words, or and meaning can vary from person to person, but if they stop and listen to the words that could really change the world, what would those be?
Oh gosh. Well, Let It Be, of course, by the Beatles.
Yeah.
Whisper Words of Wisdom. That one always comes in handy when I'm stressed. But one that's really powerful that I remember listening to when I was going through a breakup, and it was like, you have to feel it to heal it. Really. I mean,
Hmm.
I really believe that. And the song that helped me feel it and get it out, and it was just so, and it still is sometimes when I have to stop what I'm doing to listen to this woman's work by Kate Bush, the Kate Bush version.
Okay.
It's from the She's Having a Baby soundtrack, John Hughes movie that is sort of a sleeper hit with Kevin Bacon and Elizabeth
Yep.
McGovern.
Yep. I've seen
Um,
that.
Alec Baldwin's one of his first movie roles as like the corrupt friend from New York. But
Hmm.
it's a really funny, fun movie. And when she's, in labor, and there's something about that beautiful song, This Woman's Work. Um, and then I, another one that's coming to mind right now that I didn't even have written down by Sia, which is a little more contemporary,
Right.
SIA, called "Breathe Me." Um, it's sort of like, you've fallen down but kinda get back up, and, oh god, it's just the lyrics of that are very, very important. And then on a cheesy side, and I'm giving you way too much stuff, so I apologize
No,
before the
no.
answer, but I love the Tarzan soundtrack, okay? That
Phil Collins.
Disney, yes, Phil
Yes,
Collins
absolutely.
is just amazing, No Jacket Required, what a great
Yep.
um, but, "You'll Be in My Heart" by Tarzan.
Oh my God.
In that then I just if you listen to those lyrics, I mean, I think I was even reading them this morning. "Come, stop your crying. It'll be alright. Just take my hand, hold it tight. I will
Yeah.
protect you from all around you. I will be here, don't you cry. You'll be in my heart from this day on and now forevermore, always." I just love it. I just love it.
Yeah. That's a good one.
Mhm.
Yeah. That was so when my oldest boy, huge Disney fan, and of course Disney films then and soundtracks.
Mhm.
So it would be one of our things that because I'd have him every other weekend, and that sort of thing, and more. It was
Mhm.
something that was nice that we were able to have him more than 50% of the time. But
Mhm.
we would. listen to those, and that was our thing. And we would stop them, rewind them, and sing along with them.
Nice, nice.
That
Mhm.
that brings back some good
Yeah,
memories, quite
for
honestly. So
sure.
that's very cool. Thanks for sharing that. That's great.
Yeah.
So I also know that there are songs that ring so true in a person's mind or in a person's life that they just stop you in your tracks. And the lyrics sound as if they could have been written by you or for you.
Mhm.
Do you have a song like that?
That I think would be "Breathe Me" with Sia, you know,
Okay, yeah.
but also yeah, that's coming to mind, but, I think "You'll Be in My Heart" is also that because I
Yeah.
think of the people that have passed, and whenever I get sad, I feel almost it's like it's not that it's written for me, it's written by them to me,
Yeah,
you know,
gotcha.
so it's like they're trying to remind us that they're always with us, though, you know, and there's actually quite a story about that. My again, back in my news days, totally skeptical, you know, doing my job. I was a entertainment reporter for WGN at the time. Press junkets every weekend. So I was on a plane, either LA or New York every weekend. And I had just done the the junket for oh, what's the I See Dead People? You know,
Oh, Sixth Sense?
thank you. Sixth Sense. And so, wow, what a shocker that was at the twist at the end. Nobody in the press saw it coming. You know,
Right.
we all had interviewed Haley Joel Osment before he, you know, kind of blew up. And this whole idea of the supernatural was just sort of an idea back then. My dad hadn't died. I was steeped in my very 3D journalism world. And I had this very vivid dream of my grandmother Virginia, who died when I was a sophomore in high school, but we were very close. And she came to me in my dream, in the dream, and was just basically saying it was an honor to be your grandmother. And it was like this full blown conversation where I was like, whoa. And I know now
Wow.
from doing interviews from people that they call those visitations and that is, you know, when you have that
Huh.
feeling of warmth in your heart kind of thing. So I got up in the middle of the night because it woke me up and I went to go get a glass of water. I remember standing in the kitchen, Jim, and You'll Be in My Heart. That song was in my head. And I was like, "That's weird. Why is Phil Collins in my head?" Like, I thought it was the radio that I thought somebody was listening, like, I lived in a condo in the West Loop
Right.
of Chicago. I thought somebody was listening to it in the next condo. That's how clear it was.
Wow.
And then I went and looked at the lyrics and realized that was the song in my head, and now I know from interviewing many intuitive people and some people sorry, Bertie
That's
is, transitioning into a very comfortable
oh yeah. Gotta get
But
comfy.
yes, the "You'll Be in My Heart" lyrics, that was, I think, my grandma Virginia just trying to let me know I was in her heart because
Cool.
that is one of those really weird, clairaudient kinda
Yeah.
I heard the song so loudly, I thought, "This is very weird." But then, you know, that is a song by Triumph, "Hold Your Head High."
Yeah.
Whoa, hold that's another one where, you know, whenever you're down, I listen to that song, the lyrics of that song are literally like in the thumping of that drum.
Yeah.
Boom, 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 boom. It's
Yeah.
very, very awesome, inspiring when you're down, just hold your head high, you know, hold your head up. You got this.
It's a
So
charging
mhm,
forward type of
yep,
feel like this just keeps boom, boom,
yeah,
boom.
mhm,
Yeah, that's great.
yeah.
So if you can think of a song that would best describe you right now, what would that song be?
Right now?
Could even
Oh.
be your business if you'd like, but I was
Mm.
thinking more either way, you or your business.
Well, oh gosh. Um, you know what? What's coming to mind is from the Peter Gabriel album "So." I hear that voice again. You know, because I feel like we all have that little inner voice that we just ignore. It's like I want to be with you,
Yes.
I want to be clear, but each time I try, it's the voice I hear. I hear that voice again. Like I really want people to listen to their inner voice because it's a whisper. It's your inner voice. It's not like Morgan Freeman or James Earl Jones.
Right.
Sorry, you know, booming loud.
Yes.
Yeah,
Simba.
exactly. No,
Yes.
exactly. It is just that voice within your head. And so what's coming to mind is that Hear That Voice Again by Peter Gabriel,
That's
because I really
cool.
want people to just understand that their inner voice is the most powerful, not anybody else's outer voice, but your inner voice.
So that just prompted me to think that in and of itself could be an entire podcast, that trusting that inner voice, because I am a person that doesn't
Mm-hmm.
often. I
Right.
don't very often, because no,
Mhm.
even
Right.
though you can feel it, you don't even necessarily hear it, but maybe sometimes you do. You can, because we do hear voices in our brain,
True. Hmm.
because
Right.
it was it Michael Singer, Dr. Michael Singer.
Hmm.
No, he's not Dr. Dr. Michael Ray is, but Michael Singer is another author. He wrote The Untethered Soul, and he was
Oh, sure.
talking about that when you hear that voice in your head, you go, oh, there is a voice in your head. So if you keep saying hello, hello, you hear the voice saying hello. Now scream it, hello. You can hear that.
Mhm.
So we have that, but I think we're just so predisposed to just push it down and push it away and dismiss it,
Mhm.
that's really, I think that's a developed skill set. Personally, I think that you have to
The
become
trusting is it.
developed.
The
Yes,
trusting is, yes, but I
yes,
think you don't have to have a developed skill set to have that inner voice. It's just the trusting part that comes in
yes.
hard. That's
And
difficult for
thank you.
us.
That's exactly
Mhm.
what I mean. To be able to trust it, and you can identify it that it's there, but believing it and trusting that it's got the greatest good in mind for
Yeah.
you is something completely different. But
Mhm.
well, unfortunately, it's just about time to cue the music for today's episode.
Okay.
But don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the Drop the Needle podcast to stay up to date on our latest episodes. I'd also like to take a moment to thank everyone again for coming in and listening to the Drop the Needle podcast. I'd also like to thank our very special guest, Miss Jennifer Weigel, for being on our show today. So thanks, Jen.
Thanks for having me, Jim. My pleasure. What a treat.
Excellent. And I would like to invite everyone to head over to the show notes where there's a link from today's show for a playlist. But before we do that, Jen, is there anything that you'd like to promote or talk about that's coming up that might be cool
Oh,
for everybody?
that's very sweet. Well, I just would say go to jenweigel.com and click on the Spiritual Social Club tab. You can always follow me on socials. Instagram is at Jen Weigel. We've got a lot of stuff coming up in person as well as on Zoom. Now we're back in person, but we're still never going to leave that Zoom community. So if you're looking for a place where you can swap stories and resources, we are there, and we're meeting twice a week. So it's all there on my website. I just appreciate you letting me even say that. So thank
That's
you.
awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
All right, my Drop the Needle posse, like Billy Joel says, from the highs to the lows to the end of the show, this is the end of our show. Until next time, this is Jim Alstott wishing you infinite health and happiness and the perfect playlist for your life. Thank you again for being the best part of us. Catch you next time.